I found a statue that looks exactly like me. Now I'm terrified. The week crawled. 7 days felt like 70. Aunt Clara's will was simple enough, leaving me her house and its contents. Standard stuff, except for one line. The crate in the attic shall remain unopened for no less than 7 days after my passing. Aunt Clara had always been eccentric, a collector of oddities and forgotten things. Her house was a labyrinth of dusty antiques, taxidermied animals, and unsettling portraits. I loved her, but she was a lot. This crate business was just the final, bizarre cherry on top. Emily, ever the practical one, tried to soothe my frayed nerves. Maybe it's just a really valuable antique she wanted to protect. You know how she got about her porcelain dolls. Yeah, but even her dolls didn't require a week-long waiting period of suspense, I countered, swirling the lukewarm coffee in my mug. We were in my apartment, the relative normalcy of my life, a stark contrast to the chaos brewing in my mind. Look, just try to relax, watch some mindless TV, binge something, distract yourself. A week will fly by. Easy for her to say. She had a demanding but predictable job at the hospital. My freelance graphic design work allowed me to work from home, which meant ample time to obsess over a mysterious crate. The nights were the worst. The dreams started almost immediately. They were vivid, hyper-realistic, and deeply disturbing. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, heart hammering, unable to shake the feeling that I was being watched. The dreams always featured the same things: Aunt Clara's house, distorted and menacing, whispering voices just out of reach, and a dark, looming figure that I couldn't quite make out. Each night, the figure seemed to get closer. Day 6 was a blur of anxiety. I couldn't concentrate on work. I kept jumping at shadows. Every creak and groan of my apartment building sounded like a malevolent presence closing in. I called Emily constantly, needing the reassurance of her calm, rational voice. Finally, the 7th day arrived. I drove to Aunt Clara's house, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. The house felt colder, more oppressive than I remembered. Dust motes danced in the sunbeams that pierced through the grimy windows. The attic was stifling, filled with the musty smell of forgotten things. The crate sat in the center of the room, a hulking wooden box bound with thick rope. It was bigger than I expected, easily 6 feet tall. I hesitated. What if this was a terrible mistake? What if whatever was inside was better left undisturbed? But curiosity, that insidious human trait, gnawed at me. I grabbed a utility knife and started slicing through the rope. The wood creaked as I pried open the lid. Inside, nestled in layers of protective padding, stood a statue. It was me. Not just vaguely resembling me, but an exact replica. Life-sized, perfectly sculpted, and eerily lifelike. The same curve of my nose, the same slight asymmetry of my eyes, the same faint scar above my left eyebrow. It was me, frozen in stone. I stumbled back, gasping for breath. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. How was this possible? Why? The statue was beautiful, in an unsettling way. It was made of some kind of pale stone, almost luminous in the dim light. The details were incredible, down to the tiny freckles on my arms. I ran downstairs, heart pounding, and called Emily. "You won't believe this," I stammered. "The crate. It was a statue of me. It looks exactly like me." There was a long pause. "A statue? Of you? That's weird, even for Clara. Weird doesn't even begin to cover it. It's creepy, disturbing. I don't understand." Okay. Take a deep breath. Maybe she commissioned it years ago and just never told you. Maybe it was supposed to be a surprise. But why keep it hidden in a crate? And why the waiting period? "I don't know, Sarah, but I'm coming over. I want to see this for myself." Emily arrived an hour later, her brow furrowed with concern. She took one look at the statue, and her usual skepticism wavered. "That's uncanny," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "It really does look exactly like you. We spent the rest of the day trying to figure it out." We searched Aunt Clara's house for clues, poring over old letters, diaries, and photographs. We found nothing that shed any light on the statue's origins. But we did find something else. Tucked away in a dusty scrapbook, we found a collection of newspaper clippings about the Hemlock Estate, The Hemlock Estate was a notorious abandoned property on the outskirts of town. It had been vacant for decades, shrouded in rumors of strange disappearances and dark secrets. The Hemlock family had been prominent in Havenwood for generations, but their reputation had been tarnished by scandal and whispers of occult practices. One clipping, dated from the 1950s, described the disappearance of a young woman who had been visiting the estate. The article mentioned that a search party had found a lifelike statue on the property, resembling the missing woman. A chill ran down my spine. A statue, resembling the missing woman. The parallels were too unsettling to ignore. That night, the dreams were worse than ever. The dark figure was closer, its features becoming clearer. It had my face. I woke up screaming, convinced that I was no longer alone in my apartment. The next day, I did some more research. I visited the local library, a small, dimly lit building filled with the scent of old books. I spent hours poring over microfilms of old newspapers, searching for any mention of the Hemlock Estate. I found more than I bargained for. I learned about the history of the Hemlock family, their descent into madness and depravity. I learned about the rumors of a cult that had operated on the estate, performing strange rituals and human sacrifices. And I learned about a series of disappearances that had plagued Havenwood for generations, all connected to the Hemlock Estate. The articles mentioned a pattern. People resembling statues found on the property later disappeared. I stumbled out of the library, my head spinning. I needed to talk to someone who could make sense of all this. I went to see Mr. Abernathy, the owner of the local antique store. He was an old man, with a wealth of knowledge about the history of Havenwood. He had known Aunt Clara for years. "Mr. Abernathy," I said, "I need to ask you something about my aunt. Did she ever mention the Hemlock Estate?" He paused, his eyes narrowing. "Clara? The Hemlock Estate? Why do you ask?" I told him about the statue, about the newspaper clippings, about the strange occurrences in my apartment. He listened intently, his face growing increasingly grim. When I finished, he sighed and shook his head. "Clara was always fascinated by the macabre," he said. "She had a thirst for knowledge, even if it led her down dark paths. The Hemlock Estate? It's a place best left forgotten." "But what do you know about it?" I pressed. "About the statues?" He hesitated. "There are stories," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Stories of a dark entity that dwells on the Hemlock Estate, an entity that feeds on human souls. The statues are said to be anchors, vessels for this entity. Those who resemble the statues, they are vulnerable." "Vulnerable to what?" I asked, my voice trembling. "To possession," he said, "to being consumed by the darkness." I left the antique store feeling more terrified than ever. I was being watched. I was vulnerable. And the statue, the perfect replica of myself, was the key. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak and groan of my apartment. I felt a presence in the room, a cold, malevolent energy. Suddenly, I heard a noise, a soft, scraping sound coming from the living room. I got out of bed, my heart pounding. I crept to the doorway and peered into the darkness. The statue was moving. Its head was slowly turning, its eyes fixed on me. I screamed and slammed the door shut, locking it. I huddled against the wall, trembling with fear. I called Emily, but she didn't answer. I called the police, but they dismissed my claims as the ramblings of a hysterical woman. I was alone. I knew I had to get rid of the statue. But how? I couldn't touch it. I was afraid of what it might do to me. I decided to go back to the Hemlock Estate. Maybe I could find some answers there. Maybe I could find a way to destroy the statue. I drove to the estate in the dead of night, the headlights cutting through the darkness. The house loomed before me, a dark and forbidding silhouette against the moonlit sky. I parked the car and got out, my legs shaking. The air was thick with the smell of decay and something else, something ancient and evil. I walked towards the house, my heart pounding in my chest. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside, into a world of darkness and decay. The house was in ruins, the walls crumbling, the floors rotting. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like macabre decorations. I made my way to the cellar. the place where the old newspaper articles said the statues had been found. The stairs were treacherous, the wood creaking and groaning under my weight. The cellar was damp and cold, filled with the stench of mildew and rot. I fumbled for my flashlight and shone it around the room. The cellar was empty, except for a few broken chairs and a rusty metal box. But then I saw it. In the corner of the room, half hidden by a pile of rubble, was a pedestal. A pedestal that looked like it was designed to hold a statue. I walked over to the pedestal and touched it. It was cold and smooth, like polished stone. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me. A shuffling sound, like someone was moving in the shadows. I turned around, my heart leaping into my throat. Standing in the doorway was a man. He was old, with a gaunt face and piercing eyes. He was wearing a tattered suit and a top hat. It was Old Man Hemlock, the owner of the estate. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice raspy and low. "This place is not for you." "I need answers," I said, my voice trembling. "About the statues. About what's happening to me." He chuckled, a dry, mirthless sound. "You think you can understand? You think you can comprehend the ancient powers that dwell in this place?" "I have to try," I said. "I'm being haunted. I'm being controlled." "Controlled?" he said, his eyes gleaming. "You haven't even begun to understand the extent of your control." He stepped closer, his face inches from mine. "The statues," he whispered, "they are not just anchors. They are gateways. Gateways to another dimension, a dimension of pure darkness." "And the people who resemble the statues?" I asked. "They are the keys," he said. "The keys that unlock the gateways. The keys that allow the darkness to enter our world." "My aunt," I said. "She knew about this, didn't she? She tried to protect me." "Your aunt was a fool," he said. "She thought she could interfere with the ancient powers. She thought she could break the cycle." "What cycle?" I asked. "The cycle of possession," he said. "The cycle of destruction." He reached out and grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. "You are the key, Sarah," he said. "You are the one who will open the gateway." I tried to pull away, but he was too strong. He dragged me towards the pedestal. "The statue," he said. "It's not just a replica of you. It's a part of you. It's a piece of your soul." He pushed me towards the pedestal. "Stand here," he said. "Let the darkness consume you." I struggled against him, but it was no use. He forced me onto the pedestal. Suddenly, I felt a surge of energy coursing through my body. It was as if something was trying to take control of my mind. I screamed, but the sound was muffled. I felt myself slipping away, losing control. Old Man Hemlock began chanting in a strange language. The air grew cold, the shadows deepened. I saw the statue in my mind, its eyes glowing with an unholy light. I knew what I had to do. I focused all my energy, all my will, on a single thought. Destroy. I closed my eyes and screamed. The world exploded in a flash of light. I woke up in a hospital bed, my body aching, my head throbbing. Emily was sitting beside me, her face etched with worry. "Sarah," she said, "you're awake." "Thank God. What happened?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "We found you unconscious at the Hemlock Estate," she said. "Old Man Hemlock was dead. The police are investigating." "The statue," I said. "Where is it?" "It's gone," she said. "Destroyed." There was nothing left but fragments. I closed my eyes, relief washing over me. It was over. I was safe. But then I remembered something. Old Man Hemlock's words. "The statue is not just a replica of you. It's a part of you. It's a piece of your soul." Had I truly destroyed the entity, or had I only destroyed a part of myself? A week later, I was back in my apartment. I tried to resume my normal life, but things were different. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being watched. I kept seeing things out of the corner of my eye. Shadows moving, whispers in the dark. One morning, I was brushing my teeth when I noticed something strange in the bathroom mirror. A small crack had appeared on the surface of the glass. It was a faint, almost imperceptible line. But I knew what it was. It was a mirror image of a crack that had been on the statue. The statue was gone, but the connection remained. I was still a key, and the gateway was still open. I tried to ignore it, to write it off as stress-induced paranoia, but the feeling of dread persisted, growing stronger each day. Then one afternoon, as I was sorting through some clothes in my closet, I found something that made my blood run cold. Hidden in the back, behind a pile of old sweaters, was another statue. It was smaller than the first one, only about 2 feet tall. But it was undeniably me. Except this statue looked different. It looked older, more mature, and its eyes were open. I stared at the statue, paralyzed with fear. It was just a statue, I told myself, just a piece of stone. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. It was a harbinger of things to come. The cycle had begun again.